What the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Now consider this. What if everything you've believed about success and money has been holding you back? What if the real prison isn't a lack of opportunity, but the thoughts you repeat every day? Have you noticed how, after 35, many people start to believe they've missed the boat? That what hasn't been achieved by now probably never will be. This thought is one of the biggest saboteurs of success. Science and psychology have proven that the human brain doesn't clearly distinguish between what you vividly imagine and what you actually experience. This means that when you see yourself as a failure, insecure and limited, your mind registers this as reality and works to keep you in that exact state. But when you behave, dress, speak and act as if you've already achieved what you desire, your mind begins to create new connections that start aligning your life with that future you've chosen to see. Think about the last time you told yourself, "This isn't for me," or "I'm too old to start something new." How many doors did you close without even realizing it? Now imagine the opposite. What if you said with conviction, "I deserve this. This is already mine. I'm already living this"? Sound absurd? That's precisely the kind of contradiction that awakens your mind to new possibilities. Roger Bannister, for example, heard for years that running a mile in under 4 minutes was impossible. Doctors said the human body couldn't withstand it. He didn't accept that limit. Before achieving the milestone, he mentally saw himself crossing the finish line, heard the roar of the crowd, felt the heavy breath of exertion, as if he'd already done it. Until one day, in 1954, the impossible became reality. And here's the question. How many barriers are you still carrying that deep down only exist because you believed in them? After 35, you have even more reason to apply this. Because you've accumulated experiences, you've seen highs and lows, and yet you often continue repeating patterns that don't work. So, why not reverse this logic? What would happen if every day you woke up and lived as your future self? Not just think it, but truly feel it. Walk with the posture of someone who has won. Speak with the confidence of someone who has already conquered. Make decisions as if you're already there. This practice is called mental rehearsal, and it changes how you see yourself and how others see you. Neuroscience calls this neuroplasticity. Every time you repeat a mental experience with emotion, your brain strengthens the circuits connected to that experience. In other words, you're literally training your mind and body to live it. If you always see yourself as someone indebted, insecure, and full of limitations, your brain filters information to confirm that. But if you start to see yourself as prosperous, worthy, and capable, the filter changes, and opportunities that previously went unnoticed begin to appear before your eyes. Now, reflect. What if, for 7 consecutive days upon waking, you closed your eyes and visualized your transformed life? What would your home, your car, your health be like? What kind of conversations would you have with your friends? You might think it's an exaggeration, but do this test. Dress as if you've already reached a new level. Speak like someone who already has clarity and conviction. During this period, observe how the people around you begin to react differently. The world notices when you believe what you say. Napoleon Hill experienced this firsthand. Before becoming the author of Think and Grow Rich, he was just a young reporter, without prestige, without money, and without a defined future. When Andrew Carnegie challenged him to interview the most successful men of the time, Hill had neither resources nor influence, but he assumed the identity of a researcher and writer, even without yet being recognized as such. He behaved like someone who was already destined to write one of the world's most influential books on success. It was this attitude that opened doors, that made businessmen and leaders respect his presence and share their secrets. And now I ask you, are you willing to continue living as someone defeated, repeating old patterns? Or will you start acting like someone who has already won? Think about it, because in the end, it's not about waiting for a miracle to happen, but about deciding who you will be from now on. Your future already exists within you. but it will only become real the moment you choose to live as if it were already present. How many times have you caught yourself saying, "I'm trying to improve my life"? This small phrase, so common, reveals much more than it seems. It reveals the identity of someone who doesn't yet see themselves as a winner. It's as if every time you repeat it, you're reinforcing to yourself that you're not yet capable, that something is still missing, that success is always distant. Now compare that to someone who says, "I am successful." Do you notice the difference? The first expression is laden with effort, struggle, weight. The second conveys certainty, conviction, even lightness. That's where the real secret lies. You don't achieve a new reality just by changing what you do, but mainly by changing who you believe you are. Psychology has proven that identity is the filter that commands our results. People who see themselves as failures tend to repeat attitudes that reinforce that vision. They avoid risks, unconsciously sabotage themselves, make decisions too small for the size of the dreams they say they have. And the opposite is also true. Those who assume the identity of a winner begin to act in accordance with that image. It's almost automatic. Think of someone who defines themselves as an athlete. That person doesn't need to force themselves to wake up early and train because it's already part of who they are. Now compare that to someone who says, "I'm trying to get in shape." This person lives in conflict. Every workout is a battle. Every choice of healthy food requires willpower. The difference isn't the effort, it's the identity. John F. Kennedy knew this when he declared, in the midst of the Cold War, that the United States would go to the moon in that decade. He didn't say they would try, that they might succeed, that they were studying the possibility. He said they would. That statement transformed the identity of an entire nation. Suddenly, engineers, mathematicians, and administrators who saw themselves as ordinary workers began to see themselves as pioneers carrying the destiny of humanity. The identity changed before the result appeared. And that's exactly what Napoleon Hill experienced in his own life. As a young man, he was challenged by Andrew Carnegie to interview the richest and most successful men in the United States. He had no name, no money, no influence. Anyone in his place might have thought, "Who am I to approach these people?" But Hill decided to assume the identity of a researcher, a writer, someone who had the mission of revealing the secrets of success to the world. This internal change was so powerful that leaders like Thomas Edison, Henry Ford, and Alexander Graham Bell opened their doors to him. It's impossible not to feel the power of this story. A simple young man with nothing became someone heard by giants simply because he believed in who he already was before any book was published or fame achieved. And now, I want you to reflect deeply. Who do you believe you are? Because your daily choices are directly linked to the answer to this question. Do you tell yourself that you are a person who tries, who struggles, but never gets there? Or do you already present yourself, even silently, as someone who deserves, who conquers, and who belongs where you dream of being? If you don't change this identity, no matter how many courses you take, how many plans you make, or how many books you read, you'll always end up back where you started. It's like a thermostat. It may rise temporarily, but it returns to the programmed level. Science calls this cognitive dissonance. When you act in a way that doesn't match your identity, your mind creates discomfort until you return to what you believe to be true about yourself. And this is why so many people can't sustain success. They make money and then lose it, enter good relationships and then sabotage them, achieve results and then return to zero, because they never change their identity, they only change their behavior. The mistake most people make is believing they need to first achieve results to then see themselves as successful. But it's quite the opposite. You need to see yourself as successful for the results to appear. So I ask you, if you're over 35, how much longer will you keep repeating that you're trying? Because perhaps the only step missing for your life to change is not to conquer something new out there, but to decide who you are in here today. How many times have you stopped trying something because you thought, what if I fail? This is one of life's greatest thieves of opportunities. The fear of failure is silent, but devastating. It paralyzes, makes you believe it's better not to risk than to feel the pain of defeat. And yet, every time you give in to that fear, it's as if you sign a contract with mediocrity, accepting to live below what you really could. This is the point. It's not failure itself that destroys, but how you interpret it. Think of how many situations you've backed down from. Perhaps you stopped opening a business for fear of losing money. Perhaps you avoided an important conversation with someone for fear of rejection. Perhaps you gave up on changing careers because you imagined it might not work out. But tell me, what if you had tried? The worst that could have happened would be to gain experience. The best would be to completely transform your life. And that's precisely the reasoning that separates those who go far from those who spend years lamenting. History is full of people who, if they had yielded to fear, would never have done anything great. Abraham Lincoln is a brutal example of this. He faced 8 electoral defeats, went bankrupt in business, suffered deep emotional crises, and even lost the woman he loved. Most people would have interpreted each of these situations as signs that they were not capable. But Lincoln didn't. He saw each failure as part of the preparation for something greater. He behaved like someone destined to lead, even when he seemed to be sinking. In the end, he became President of the United States and one of the greatest leaders in history. Remember something. After 35, the fear of failure tends to intensify. Why? Because you've accumulated responsibilities, family, bills, commitments. The weight of the consequences seems greater. But isn't that precisely why you should take the risk? Because if you don't change now, how much longer do you intend to postpone the life you want to live? In 10 years, you'll look back and wonder, what if I had tried? Napoleon Hill experienced times like that too. During the 1929 crisis, he lost almost everything, including financial security and family stability. It would have been easy to give up, but he didn't allow fear to consume him. On the contrary, it was during this period that he gathered strength to write even more about the importance of faith and persistence. The result? His books continued to inspire millions of people, crossing generations. That's the power of not allowing failure to be definitive. And now I challenge you. How would you face your challenges if you had the absolute certainty that success is already inevitable? Would you give up on starting a business just because someone might laugh? Would you stop pursuing a new job because you might get rejected? Would you abandon a dream because of the risk of failure? Remember, the risk of failure is always present, but the risk of not trying is infinitely greater, guaranteeing nothing will change. Most people overestimate what they can accomplish in a single day and drastically underestimate what they can achieve in a decade. This misperception leads many to chase immediate, massive transformations while ignoring the true engine of change. Small, consistent daily habits. It's like trying to build a house starting with the roof, failing to recognize that a solid foundation is built brick by painstaking brick, detail by tireless detail. And when it comes to success, that foundation is daily ritual. Pause and examine your own routine. What's the first thing you do when you wake up? Many, almost unconsciously, grab their phone, dive into social media, and begin their day by feeding their minds information that adds nothing of value. Within half an hour, their energy is drained, their mental clarity compromised. Now imagine if, instead, you created a simple yet powerful ritual to align your mind with your goals. 10 minutes of visualization, 5 minutes to write down your priorities, a few moments of quiet reflection to connect with the version of yourself who has already achieved what you desire. It seems small, But it's precisely this accumulation of small actions that creates something grand. Vince Lombardi, coach of the Green Bay Packers, understood this better than anyone. When he took over a team in utter disarray, he didn't focus on immediate sweeping changes, but on daily rituals, repeated relentlessly. His players practiced fundamental skills with such discipline that gradually the team's identity transformed. They stopped seeing themselves as losers and began to behave like champions, even before they won on the scoreboard. The result was historic. 5 championships in 7 years. The transformation didn't begin on days of glory. It began with daily rituals. And here's the direct connection to your life. What rituals do you maintain today? Do you organize your workspace like someone who's already prosperous? Or do you live amidst clutter, reinforcing the idea that nothing flows smoothly? Do you dress like the version of yourself you aspire to be, or just like someone merely surviving? It may seem superficial, but it's not. Your environment, your appearance, your words, everything communicates an identity to your mind. If you live like someone disorganized, exhausted, and lacking clarity, don't expect different results. Napoleon Hill experienced this intensely. During the 1929 crisis, when misery and despair gripped millions of Americans, he could have given up. But it was during this period that he maintained the ritual of writing every day, even without knowing if anyone would ever publish his ideas. He cultivated a daily habit of discipline that ultimately resulted in works that have transcended generations. Imagine if he had yielded to the external chaos and abandoned his rituals. The world would never have received Think and Grow Rich or the Law of Success. And here's a crucial detail that psychology confirms. When you create and repeat rituals, your brain enters a process called cognitive dissonance. This means it cannot tolerate the inconsistency between your current identity and the new habits you are cultivating. The mind's natural tendency is to align behaviors with the new identity. This is precisely why, at first, your new rituals may feel uncomfortable, even artificial. But this discomfort is a sign of growth because your brain is reorganizing itself to support a greater version of you. Now I ask you, what daily rituals have you cultivated that are shaping your identity? Because, like it or not, they are shaping your life. Perhaps you're already trapped in small habits that reinforce scarcity, insecurity, and procrastination. But equally, you can begin today to build habits that reinforce prosperity, clarity, and discipline. It's a choice, and if you embrace that choice, in 10 years you won't look back wondering where you went wrong, but will be grateful for having started the day you decided to live like someone who has already won. The words you use daily aren't merely a reflection of your thoughts. They are a direct command to your mind, shaping how you perceive reality. How many times have you caught yourself saying, "I'll try"? This seemingly harmless phrase already carries within it the seed of doubt, as if failure were a natural possibility. The same happens when you say, "someday," or "if everything goes well." These phrases program your brain to expect uncertainty, limitation, and postponement. And the question is, could you be fueling your own stagnation simply through the words you repeat every day? Neuroscience has shown that language is not just communication, it's mental programming. When you say, "I am, I will, I decide," you activate brain circuits linked to conviction and focus. But when you use maybe, if, I hope, the activation is completely different, signaling hesitation and vulnerability. It's as if you're constantly sending mixed signals to your own brain and consequently to your life. Think about it. If you constantly affirm that you can't afford it, that you're incapable, why would you expect your mind and actions to align with grand results? Winston Churchill understood this during one of history's darkest hours. When England was on the verge of surrender, he couldn't afford to be vague. Before Parliament, he didn't say they would try to resist or that they might hold out a little longer. He said with absolute firmness, "We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall never surrender." These words weren't just political rhetoric, they became a mental architecture that sustained an entire nation against all odds. Now tell me, what words have you used to sustain your life during times of crisis? Have you strengthened or weakened yourself through the vocabulary you repeat? The way you talk about money is a clear example. How many times have you said, "I can't afford it, it's too expensive, it's not possible"? Each time you utter these phrases, you reinforce in your mind the identity of someone limited. Try replacing them with phrases like, "I'm prioritizing larger investments," or "I'm strategically organizing my resources." It may seem like just wordplay, but it's not. It's mental repositioning. And when your mind begins to perceive abundance instead of scarcity, opportunities appear where there were once only blocks. And here's a crucial point. The questions you ask yourself are also powerful words. When faced with a problem, do you ask yourself, "Why does this always happen to me?" Or, "What can I learn and gain from this?" The first question puts you in the role of victim. The second puts you in the role of creator. Your brain is a machine for finding answers, and it will seek evidence to justify the question you ask. So if you ask, "Why am I so unlucky?" it will list a series of situations that reinforce that view. But if you ask, "How can I turn this into an advantage?" it will look for solutions, ideas, and paths that were invisible until then. Now I challenge you. How about spending a whole week paying rigorous attention to the words you use? Notice each time you automatically say something that expresses doubt, limitation, or defeat, and immediately replace it with a phrase of conviction. At first, it will seem artificial, almost forced. But this feeling isn't a sign of falsehood. It's a sign of change. Over time, your mind begins to accept these words as commands, and your outlook on life transforms. Remember, words create worlds. Churchill created resistance with words. Hill opened doors with words. And you? Will you continue using language that reinforces limitations, or will you start speaking like someone who has already won? True change begins within you, not outside. The way you think, speak, and act creates the identity that shapes your entire reality. It doesn't matter if you're already 35 or 50 years old, because the moment to decide who you are begins now. And if this content resonated with you, know that the next step is already waiting for you. The next video appearing on the screen will help you climb another step on this journey of evolution to become 1% better than you are today. I sincerely appreciate you staying with me until now, and I'll be waiting for you in the next video.